phone that way to forget.
Oh, they upgraded their voices now. Anyway, welcome to LUG. This is the third Wednesday of the month. Somehow, I have no idea. Yeah, we have a website, email list, and if people actually care, we can talk about how to do chat stuff. If someone actually truly does care, I'm trying to keep an eye outside because I forgot to hang up any sort of thing saying that we have the meeting here. So I haven't seen anyone come to the door, but the problem is apparently the Windsor Heights Lutheran Church is doing a lot of stuff tonight, and yeah, there's stuff going on over there. But anyway, so yeah, if we want to talk, we can do this, probably do it afterwards as well, just exactly who wants to do what. I'm looking for someone who's willing to take the lead and actually cares enough about chat stuff. Otherwise, momentum is going to stay the way the momentum is going to stay because right now I don't have the bandwidth to take it on. So yeah, yay.
It's the thing of the Lorax, until someone cares a whole awful lot.
I was going to say, people care. They care strongly. However, not strongly enough to actually do something about it yet, is what it seems like. So yeah.
Amen. Preach it.
So yeah, and then upcoming meetings is in June is Chasm. At least I'm assuming still, if that's correct.
Yeah, I just need to, do some research and write the talk and troubleshoot and plan a demo and all that good stuff.
Well, let me know if you need help, and
I've deployed it twice.
Awesome.
So I should be good to do it a third time and take good notes and all slides and screenshots and all that.
And then on Friday, or not Friday, what am I thinking of what? Friday I'm leaving, but anyway, in July, there's a special interest group, beverage and provisions, or beer and pizza, depending on who you ask, at Felix and Oscar's, provided they don't tell us no, we can't be there, because trying to reserve it this far out is counterproductive because they won't remember. Heck, they don't even remember when you call ahead. So here we are.
Oh, so they have reservations that don't work.
Yeah.
It hasn't yet, but
Well, it didn't work if they didn't know you were coming.
No, we just go. Oh, throw tables together.
Yeah. Yeah,
So what you're saying is if you forget to make reservations, we just tell them like, yeah, remember the last few times we were here? I don't know what's going on. Must be something wrong with your system.
Yeah. Also, I know if you email them, they don't actually reply ever.
So it's effectively deaf null?
Yeah, yeah.
It's probably like the CEO's, cousins, brothers, ex, whatever, that set it up and never checks it anymore. Nobody knows that it still exists on the website.
Or they're just so busy running an awesome pizza place that they never actually read their email and get so much spam that it just falls through the cracks.
Fair.
Also likely.
Yeah, either of those are possible.
Yeah, I know that the best auto mechanic I've ever had did not even have a website. So, yes, entirely possible.
Yeah,
expertise.
So anyway, though, Linux news, I found the hallucinating text to be rather horrifying.
Yeah, there's some horrifying half truths in there. That's the best part.
Yeah. So anyway, though, the stuff of nightmares. So this, I will actually send these links out ahead of or afterwards, because all of these are actually hot links to the articles that we're talking about stuff. I spent tens of minutes hitting a couple websites. So yeah, I've thoroughly done my due diligence here. But a horrifying thing is that, let's grab laser pointer. Fedora 43 is going to be Wayland only. They are finally kicking Xorg to the curb.
And that's not the scariest Xorg related topic on that slide.
Yeah, so that's absolutely horrifying because, God darn it, I have a couple things that don't run well under Wayland. XRDP is one of them. And all of the Wayland-based remote desktoping stuff that I've seen has just been utterly garbage without being already logged in to the local machine. Then you can log in, but it hasn't worked well for just as a remote terminal server, because apparently I'm like the one person in the world who actually wants to do that.
Welcome to Linux.
Yeah. So anyway, though, in the little bit of Microsoft news, apparently WSL is now open sourced.
Yes.
I went to the GitHub, but there's supposedly code there.
Yeah, so that's where.
Or does it look like code on that newspaper we just saw on the previous slide?
I haven't gone, actually, it easily could just be that, because I just went and went to the GitHub repo, saw that, something vaguely looked like, it contains source code.
Yeah,
so like the alias the Windows system calls?
No,
No,
this
no.
is WSL 2, not 1.
Yeah, this is WSL 2, so it's the VM-based WSL.
Yeah.
And it's not all the parts. The Plan 9 interface and I think one other part aren't open source.
So, what was the concern about something GitHub just saw code?
Is it just similar? Is it just like the random nonsense text like we have in the
Yeah,
It looks like code at a distance.
Yeah, the question was, did the code from Microsoft
Look
look like
like
that?
Gotcha.
And the answer is I can't tell you because I only looked close enough to tell you that there's maybe source code there.
Yeah, so, no, so my first thought was if this was just another one of those, like, Microsoft dropped something on GitHub and somebody saw it and reported on it, not realizing that it was like all binaries or something.
No. They went and said, "Hey, we released this
But
thing."
they actually apparently have a press release on learn.microsoft, or not a press release, but like an article on learn.microsoft.com.
Yeah, this is actually legit and real. So, and absolutely horrifying, but hey, here we are.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah, so anyway, though, also,
Windows 12, open source, Windows 12.
Ubuntu 25.10 has switched their sudo to being Rust-based.
Which I think
Not
joins their
pseudo,
core utils as we covered
Yeah.
last month.
all core.
Yeah, the big thing of note is that they're trusting all that to be Rusty. So WD-40 is your friend.
My real question is, if I go and take all the CVEs from sudo from the past 15 years and just go apply them to the sudo, well, how many new CVEs can I get?
You know, that is a very good question. And
you work at a Linux company. Why don't you go find out?
I could go do that.
And it's better yet, it's the competitor's Linux company that is doing that. So
Yeah.
they would love you for that there. You get a raise, you get a promo.
and even better than that, you could then use AI to write your bug reports.
And then get told no by the core project.
Yeah, curl, well, because apparently they've been getting a bunch of
Oh,
crap.
it's been bad for them. Like, I've been reading some of the posts that Daniel's been posting, and they're horrifyingly just like.
Yeah, they're just absolutely terrible posts that are worthless. But so anyway, though, if you use an LLM to write your bug report for you, or just are horrible at writing stuff, they're going to just tell you to go pound sand because most of them probably aren't even actually real.
Yeah, that's been the big one, is like inventing functionality, reporting bugs that they fixed like 5 years ago. On and on and on and on. You go check out Daniel's blog if you want to go see countless examples.
So now the question comes, is this part of a harassment scheme to get the maintainers of curl to step down, and then some shady person will come in and take it over, like that one attack was?
The XD thing?
Yeah,
I feel like Daniel would like burn it all to the ground first.
but still,
Yeah,
it seems like
It
an
bothers me
interesting.
in Chrome with what U.S. Department of Justice is trying to do to spin them off, to get them out from under Google's lawyers, which can protect it.
Yeah, I don't know. But continuing on boldly here, Redis is open source again. If you believe them and trust them that they won't screw stuff up again.
Asterisk, double dagger, asterisk.
Yeah.
Oh, 2510. Okay, so not out yet. That makes sense.
Yep.
I think Core Utils is also targeting that too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Then also KD Plasma LTS releases are no more.
If they ever really exist, I think the answer is no.
Yeah, if a KD Plasma release falls in the woods, will anyone actually even tell on their computer? Anyway, the UN no longer uses Google Forms because apparently they're going big into like privacy and information security stuff and didn't want to give the entire world's data to Google. So yay.
Well, because the US decided to use Signal for so many things that maybe they went, this is a bad idea. We should
Signal. Hold on. Signal. It's actually not Signal, let's say.
Yeah,
That's a whole other ball of
They're
wax.
using Signal via an app, TM Signal,
Oh, boy.
that
Yeah.
sends a copy
Yes.
to Israel in an unencrypted format.
Because record keeping. They're trying to do the right thing, but did it poorly.
Yeah, they're using Signal.
Yes.
Yeah, doing the right thing the wrong way, just like my talk on registered pets instead of actually doing pets and cattle.
Yes.
Yeah, so anyway, though, the whole thing though is that they now have like a standard almost manifesto that they published, and they're now practicing what they preach, at least for one of their directorates or something like that. Also, Alma Linux 9.5 is out. This was the sort of throwing an elbow here.
That is 6 months behind.
Which isn't a huge surprise.
Because 9.6 also came out at the same time as 10 did.
Yeah, and then also Red Hat 10 was released.
That has no X11. Like, it's not as like Fedora 43, the X11 package might still exist. It does not exist in 10. Like, it's gone. D&E.
That's bad.
Like, the X11 package is gone. There is no fallback. You will be using Wayland if you like it or not.
That's terrifying.
That might be a nice rod for some people.
Yeah. So the good news is I'm not planning on using Red Hat 10 anytime soon, and all of the machines that will be running it, it took them 5 years to upgrade to like 2 versions back. So
Oh, you're the customer that makes me cry over your bug report.
yeah. So anyway, though, all the machines that I need to connect to that are Red Hat just came off of CentOS 6. So
Yeah, but we got some that we're going to be running Red Hat 7 for eternity on, so it's fine.
I can't tell you half the things I've heard, but old RHEL versions kicking around, yeah, their thing.
yeah.
I've heard some horrifying stories.
So if anyone has any other news stuff that, because this was just a cursory, hey, I've got 20 minutes over lunch review of the news that's happened.
The Red Hat Summit in general is going on right now, and apparently they're putting AI in everything.
And so is Microsoft.
Yes,
And Google.
And Google.
Because Google also is had the I/O Now wish as well.
Yes.
Yeah, and apparently Space Karen talked at Microsoft, even though he's suing them at the same time. But yeah.
Frenemies.
Yeah. Our Lord and Savior Elon.
I was gonna say, is Space Karen also a guy that throws cars into space when he's mad?
Especially a co-founders he doesn't like.
Yes. Developers.
AI.
So, okay, that reminds me
Yeah.
that reminds me, I was so excited when I saw this domain was available, and I made great use of it. SteveBallmer.dev.
Does it redirect to an appropriate place on YouTube?
Yes, it absolutely does.
Oh, that's awesome.
Specifically, the longest video that I've seen of it
Oh, nice.
in a long time. Like, not long enough to just like be boring the whole time, but long enough to have like
It's like the 48
5 minutes
hour.
of context.
Oh,
It's like minutes long. Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, though, that does take us to the main event here. And yes, Tux is ready to duke it out with Steve.
awesome.
Also, I have no idea what's going on with that texture of his feathers.
Oh,
That's a good point.
There's a lot of things going
it's
on.
pinstripe, what do you think? It is a tux.
Again, I spent 20 minutes putting this whole slide deck together here today, so. But anyway, though, let's see here if I can remember which side my screen is here. I'll hit stop sharing.
Well, let's see if my half updated Firefox, I haven't restarted since I ran OS updates, actually shares my screen.
Well, apparently updating Chrome made my mouse cursor absolutely ginormous in Chrome only.
That's fun.
That's hilarious.
I'm going to have to leave the meeting real quick to fix my sharing. The joys of Linux.
Awesome.
All right, after much to do, we'll talk about the Linux audit system. Quick agenda, I'll talk about what the audit system is, what the logs look like, and kind of analyze a couple of sample entries, how to configure it. We'll do maybe a little bit of demo. We'll see if my systems I have here work, and then we'll have some questions. Standard disclaimer, what is the audit system? From the Docs, the audit system is a way to track security development information about your system. Note, this is a way to track, not a way to prevent it. I gave a talk last year on SA Linux if you want to prevent things. But if you're looking to see what people do in your system, audit is the way to do it. So there are two parts. There's the kernel system, and this is what actually collects the data. The audit system is very much, what files and what syscalls are being ran are kind of the big things. And the kernel collects that. And there are user-based tools that help collect it, write it to disk, and then also help you review what happened. So a couple tools, there's Auditd. This is the main one that kind of controls the kernel component. This is how you can ad hoc write rules. Audit ISP, you can use this to send logs to other events like syslog. This is mainly on the Ubuntu and older than RHEL 8, I believe. Yeah, RHEL 8 or newer. And then there's AU search, AU report. There's a bunch of utils like that that you can use to search the audit log. Things you can monitor, you can monitor file access if you want to know, hey, when's some of the last, touch the shadow file, the password file, or if you're at a CDC and someone wants to go audit when the last time someone touched the flag file. I gave a talk at ISU and I told them, might want to put an audit watch on that file because you can see exactly who and what process accessed that. System calls, if you want to see all the times that someone failed to access or read a file. You can see what commands are ran by users. Also things in this log are security events, so count lockouts, sign in, SA Linux failures. If you want to go really destroy your logs, especially on an interfacing system, you can put firewall events in there. But as we all know, even SSH logs on a public-facing internet is already enough to make your audit log sad. Other fun things you can do, you can send an email when the audit space is full, or if you live in a really high-risk environment, just turn the system off when your audit log is full. There was a certain government standard until very recently that was a suggestion.
Vibes sysadmining.
Yes. But hey, at least you know what happened.
I was gonna say, before it does that, does it audit and say, I'm gonna help the system, or does it just do it and then be like, sorry, we don't know what happened?
Well, basically, the whole reason why you do that is if you have someone who filled the logs, you would know what to do.
Right.
Or know what happened. And actually, a lot of good systems, they actually put in the STIG, they have var log is on partition, and then var log audit also on a separate partition. And var log audit is typically worded at least 7 days of audit storage needs to be allocated. So whatever that is for your system.
I had $1 for every time the log filling up the entire system disk and bringing the system.
I think all of us have been there. Yeah, there's a reason why they recommend putting your logs on the separate partition, so you can just fill your log partition and hopefully not completely clear your system.
Windows, I'm looking at you.
Well, the thing is with Windows, the event log is full of lots and lots of information. None of it is all that useful.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever actually gotten good use out of the event log.
I've gotten use out of the application log of seeing oh, hey, this application's like segfaulting in the background.
Yeah.
That's about it, though.
I've got good usage by seeing that there was a lot of activity at a certain timestamp, and then going to the sim to figure out what actually happened.
Yeah, there's all sorts of different actions, and there's a couple different ways. There's admin action, which means like, hey, if it's 95% full, send an email, rotate the logs to compress them, and then when it's 100% full, then halt the system, delete them, do something else. A very important note, you can't provide performance system, you can't provide performance if you use the audit system incorrectly. If you have a database server that's really busy and you audit all recalls, you will have an extremely bad day. You will kill off disk performance. Like, audit is a very powerful tool, but use it wisely, you can kill your box. How to install Red Hat and Friends, provided your install is somewhat sane and not created by some insane cloud provider. I'm looking at you, Hensner. They're SQL is disabled by default off their system, so makes me nervous. It's already installed and should be collecting logs. Doesn't collect a lot, but it does collect stuff. And Debian and Friends, you can install it via the Auditd package. How to start it? Ideally, it should be already started when you start with your system. If you want to ensure it starts, you can add audit equals 1 on the kernel boot option. If you need to start it, the service command makes an entrance. You need to use the service command. If you don't start it, if you start with systemctl, there's a possibility that the audit ID, this is like audit is a bit of magic you can continue to figure out who actually ran the command. So if you log in at SSH and then sue a bunch, AUID still should be the same. So like if you log in as admin, sudo root, the AUID, even though there's anything to do as admin, will still be your user's utilization as. If you use systemctl, that tracking can be broken. And there's a quote from the RHEL 10 docs. I quickly checked last night as the docs are being released there. So it's still true even in RHEL 10. So we're going to do a quick example of watching.
So, quick question on that. What was with the all of the text having different sizes? Was there a reason behind it? Oh, no reason? Okay.
No reason at all.
Okay, I was trying to figure out.
I think there was changing the fonts or something, and I did a poor job on like TTYing and things like that.
Gotcha, okay. I just thought it was me. Okay.
No, that was that wasn't me.
Never mind.
So we will just add a command as root. This will just be a temporary audit thing that we can add. This is the new format. If you see things using the -w for the path, that is technically considered deprecated. So here we'll say always audit on exit if you edit the shdb config file. And if the -f means if it's written read, or executed, we want to do it. And then the -k, that's just for your sake. You can put anything you want to, doesn't affect anything, that's just for your organization. It makes it easier when you're searching for things if you have a key that's common or not common, kind of depending on how you want to audit things. Then as the user ladmin, we'll go and intentionally make some noise. Go and touch it. And then where do we get these logs? It's bar log audit .log, au search, and then as we'll see here, this one command will actually create 4 events in the audit log. So what are those 4 events? So we'll see the syslog, or the syscall one, and we'll actually get these decoded later, but it says the UID and the group ID and the effective user ID and all this fun stuff. The EUID is for things like if you use pass WD, that would be 0 because it's a SUID binary. Current directory, so where that command was executed. Next one's the path of what we're actually being touched. And that last proc tile, that's actually, if we put that in CyberChef, that's base64, that's a hex encoded what command was ran.
Yes.
So you can see exactly what command caused that audit command. And the way you know they're all related is see how there's that 253.253. Actually, excuse me, that colon ID is an ID. So that means all those events are related to each other. we can make the Auditd actually just decode this for us. So if we tell audit search to interpret it, I've cut off a little bit. It does the the text decoding for us.
Put the command back.
Oh, that one, yeah, I put that one back for you.
I ran into this recently and I'm like, why is this all?
Yeah, the dash interpret's important. The dash K, that's just filtering what key I'm looking at. If you don't pass that, you'll just get, the full audit log, which is, a bit of a fire hose. Also, there's a link at the end of the slide, so if you want to get that too. So this actually decodes everything for you, so that, you see instead of, UAD 1000, it says, ladmin, it decodes all that for you, tells you what command was ran, and also, if you have a selection enabled, tells you all the subject name for that.
Does it by chance give, if the user was logged in via SSH, like their IP, does it?
You would have to go and trace up one command, you won't be able to tell from that one
You
command.
could like search up it and find the last login of
Right.
the user, okay.
Yeah, you should be able to, using this, you should be able to trace and kind of figure out what.
Or does it give like a session for the user?
It does give like a parent PID, which is not that useful, but
Okay.
there's things you can do to trace it. There's not like an active like session ID. And these A sessions and syscall, these are actually hex encoded arguments for the syscall. So actually it's like exactly what happened there. I mean, you do have TTY equals PTS0, so you might be able to tell from the
Okay.
TTY.
For those of us who are smart and have everybody log in with the same login,
You should at least be able to tell from the TTY if it was from from TTY, from what type of console is being used.
Okay.
And if it's not in this particular thing, it does exist many other places and log files and
Yeah.
from,
I'm just hearing things.
Yeah.
from Pam and from whatever else.
Now there's multiple other logs, but like you can able to see, okay, this bad thing happened. Okay, now let me go trace what happened.
Welcome to parenting.
Yes. And also notice this is success equals no, so that means since I ran this as my bulk user who have a root file, it'll tell you no. And you can, for example, if you only want to reduce your, for example, for read, for example, you can say just only audit read failures. And on a normal system, in theory, that should be relatively low. So that can kind of be able to help you detect if there's somebody trying to poke around at the system, trying to figure out what their access is. Now, when you make that persistent, because the auditctl command we run, that's going to go away as soon as we reboot. So we can put files in etc auditd rules.d. They're loaded in alphabetical order, so they're recommended to use, number dash name. And then after you modify those files, you should do dash dash load. As we get into it, there will be some recommendations for ordering. There's some, put your initial config. There's things like -C, which stands for ignore invalid rules. And we'll talk about a little bit later. Some of the sample rules are, if you're working on x86, you're good to go. But if you have an ARM device, the sample files might not be working correctly. So that's one thing to note is that audit is extremely architecture specific. So you've got x86, because remember syscall are very processor specific. Because like the open syscall is actually a little slightly different on ARM versus x86. Or if you're using more exotic architectures like PowerPC or S93X. Something to be aware of is that if you're running on non-x86 architectures, a lot of the examples and the documentation on that isn't great, but something to be aware of if you're running on alternative architectures. So here we put something in that same rule we had. We put it in 40 local.rules. And those we disrupt notice how it's the same command, like same arguments. That's the one nice part is that if you want to go test something, you can just copy and paste it, put CTL in front of it, and then that's only there for the local session. Really nice for developing rules. And at the end we put 99-finalize. -E2 means after that's called, you can't change the rules anymore until the system is rebooted. So if you want to make it so the attackers can't, disable the audit rules, then do their stuff. This is, if they disable it, you're going to get the hey, I edited this file to comment out the E2. then the reboot, then audit's off. So that's something if you want to, prevent shenanigans, you can do that. So obviously don't do that once you actually have your rule set defined, because that auditctl command to add rules won't let you do anything. A word of caution, I kind of said this before. If Auditd finds an invalid rule, it will stop loading rules. So if you have, all the, you have tens of files of all these rules, and you have an error in, 11, everything past that, gone. Now, if you put -c early in the thing, like 10-base config, you can make it so it'll just skip that one. So that was kind of relatively useful there. You don't have to write all these rules yourself. You can if you want to. So in user share audit sample rules, there's some few samples there. If I get a demo up, we'll look at those. Your mileage will vary, as said there. This is previously said you're running ARM or S390X or MIPS or PowerPC or whatever fancy architecture you like to run, they will be different just because the syscalls vary. If you want some inspiration, say yes, if you give them your email, and they'll probably give you a bunch of spam, they'll give you they have a standard there. And then if you really like punishment, the STIG also has some sample audit rules there too, if you want to go kind of get some inspiration. All right, now for the fun part. I'll stop sharing for a second. I might be able to pull up a cloud instance that I have. But any other questions while I'm pulling this up?
It looks super useful.
It's one of those things. It's super useful. You have to remember to set it up first. It is after you've been hacked is the wrong time to be setting up auditing. It's unfortunately before. The default ones, especially they'll tell you, someone SSH'd in, someone sudoed, things like that will be in the audit log. But the more advanced, like, hey, did someone run this command, is going to be not there.
Also, I will say that this thing's camera is a lot more smart if you've been watching its editorial.
It kind of picks whoever's talking. And actually, I'm using this mic here right now, so I'm not using this thing.
Oh, okay.
So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Yay, array microphones.
We'll see how good it is.
All right, cool. I have a into a stream 10 box here. So if we look in user share audit rules, there's a whole bunch of sample files here. So we can look at, we'll look in, base in the space file here first. So first rule it does, it deletes all the rules before it. Then it sets the buffer size. This is kind of increased. This kind of can help. You have to. Usually this number is large enough, but if you have a busy system, this kind of allows more events to queue in the buffer before they're written to disk. And then -F1, you can kind of tell where you want failure modes to be written. We'll look here at kind of some examples of what you need to audit, or so kind of what we've been doing for access fails. We kind of made talk about read failures. Notice here, there's some ligatures here, but notice how there's B32 and B64. On x86 systems, you need both, because if you have 32-bit binaries and you only audit 64, you actually won't catch those events, because the syscalls are different for 32-bit syscalls and 64-bit syscalls, even if you're running on a 64-bit OS. So here we're saying, audit all these syscalls. Something if you want to improve performance is grouping common syscalls together. So grouping all open syscalls together can help performance instead of having individual ones. And then you say, only if it exits on third access. And this one's somewhat useful by saying AUID, so the audit is greater than 1,000. So that's just, you don't audit system users. And you also audit if the user ID is unset, and there's just a key, so that, remember the audit search command I had, -K, that makes it really easy to just go search for -K unsuccessful access. If we look at the 99 finalize, that's just the -E2, like I said before, that just makes it immutable until reboot. And there's all sorts of fun ones in here. Ignore various things. There are some things for various standards in here. I will note these aren't well updated. Here's a fun one, power abuse. So if you're trying to figure out if an admin is trying to edit other users' files, this is a little audit command you can write by saying if, AUID, so if something's acting as root, but the audio ID is greater than 1,000, so that means, they're sudoing around. And the owner of the object does not match who's being audited. It's not the user. And you can kind of do that to figure out who's modifying the other user's files. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with that. It's kind of out-of-the-box thinking of audit rules.
Not that I'd ever have been caught using.
Yeah, or if you want to audit, installing kernel modules for whatever reasons. There, you can see various, loading or loading kernel modules. And 31 privileges like using, various, finding things and things of that nature. So all sorts of good inspiration here for audit rules. And there's the one, if you just, making sure that if you want to audit all 32-bit syscalls, because in theory they all should be 32-bit ABI, but if you want to make sure people aren't trying to exploit fun things, you can just audit all 32-bit syscalls.
That also will be like drinking from a fire hose, but
depends on your system. Like if you've got binary, all the binaries you get from your vendor should be 64-bit ABI binaries, unless you have some vendor application that's only using 32-bit and that's the app server. Then you probably don't want to run that one. Again, I think that's fire hose box is sad.
that's part of the know your system.
Yes, audit is very much, you need to know your system before you do this, and definitely test in a non-production environment when you're rolling these out. And then also you can do all these. Also, you can, if you want these to go to your SIEM, you can send them to syslog and then have Splunk or Elastic or whatever you want pick them up, and then use that for alerting. Any other questions?
So you could have it, assuming you're using it with the SIM or something like that, you don't need to have it take any action when it's full, because it won't be full, because it'll be not accumulating.
Right, you can just, you can just set up, your logs Xfil to always make sure you're sending it to whatever your SIEM is, and then making sure that you're actually deleting logs off the disk in a relatively, efficient time. Just like any, standard Linux log management.
there any things that make it angry? Is there anything that you can just end up going, oh crap, other than filling your disk IO?
There's just auditing thing that you shouldn't be auditing, like just, I want to audit all syscalls. And just, because that's a great way just to make the system angry in general, because it's a bit like eBPF, like this, remember, like, when you say load the rules, you are kind of telling the kernel that there's a bit of overhead of like, hey, kernel, go do this. And cough, companies like, I'm blanking on the name, one that caused all the outages last year.
Lumen?
No.
No, not Sentinel-1, it's the
No.
CrowdStrike.
CrowdStrike, yeah. If you're a CrowdStrike,
You said Sentinel-1, I'm like, oh, I know what outages you're talking about.
Yeah.
No.
So I
if
was
you're-
thinking of the pipe burst in the single point of failure building downtown, which was Lumen.
no.
911 perhaps.
CrowdStrike was way worse.
Yeah, so if you're like CrowdStrike, they're writing your own sketchy custom kernel module, go right to audit rules. Because if you want to know almost anything you can do, you can just go ask the audit system to go log it for you, and then you can go pick it up.
Unless, of course, your kernel changes to your system before
Yes.
it boots.
Except part of the reason CrowdStrike does it the way they do is they're not looking to just audit. They want to actually stop things in the middle.
Including the kernel.
Yes.
Yes, very much so.
However, I will note, if you want to stop things, go write SE Linux rules. So,
Yes, agreed.
because that way you can, do all the user space stuff, and there's a little bit of checking by the user space tools, but further load into the kernel to say, hey, this is going to be, you can still write, bad audit rules, but, completely invalid stuff will just get skipped. Even if you do the -C trick, it'll just skip it. So, something to kind of keep in mind is if you do use that, you need to keep an eye when you load your logs, and depending on your rel version and things like that, it can be hard to catch those, but just make sure you're watching when you're loading rules that, yes, I didn't write some bad one, and the one I thought was, the super critical awesome rule I wrote, that just doesn't do anything because it just skipped it.
Is there a good way, other than just looking at the logs, to see if it's actually loading through everything initially, if it's actually?
So if you do if you do a general load, that will be like that will tell you if it's getting angry.
Because I have a feeling now that that I really wanted to come to this because we have an Ansible module that's by default loading Auditd into like all of our systems.
Mm-hmm.
It was written before anybody that's currently on our Linux team was there, and I don't think anybody's looked at it. So I'm kind of wondering if it's doing anything for anybody right now, and I'd like to make sure it actually is used.
Yeah, so if you run that command and you have some invalid rules, especially if you remove that -C command, this will tell you, hey, you've run into some issues. And also it tells you here, you can get all of, information on what the, some of the config options that Audit's doing. Anything else?
Now I'm gonna have to go home and try it.
Real quick.
Actually, when you mentioned earlier,
Quick final notes, and then also give the URL to the slides. I said before, as harping on rules are CPU architecture independent, and then also you can massively mess up your system performance if you don't do it right.
no, I
And
had a
then
question.
there's the link.
Yeah, there's nothing quite as much fun as trying to log your performance to try and figure out why things are running slow and have it be the logging that is
Yes.
slow.
Yes, yeah. This might not be the best thing for log. Yeah, the best thing for performance logging, but it's more like, hey, something you could write, audit, if the path is not equal to this for your application, if it is writing somewhere outside of where it's not expected to.
Yeah.
Like there's a bunch of things you can do for that. Like, I know my application. If you want to know, just alerting mode of SE Linux, don't write SE Linux rules, just want to write audit rules. You can be like, hey, is this thing writing outside of it or doing something it shouldn't be doing?
Where SE Linux would be, this thing will not write outside of where it's supposed to be writing.
Right. Even if it's root, I will tell you no. Like, depending on how you have your system configured, you can make it root not root. That's Linux.
Yeah, carrot versus stick.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely talked about this when I was talking this at Iowa State. I'm like, if you really want really good earnbacks and like make Jared really sad when he's up at Iowa State taking over your boxes, because like, or maybe make him happy because you can exactly how whatever Jared did,
Yeah, because the SC Linux stuff could get you into trouble with the comp, because should have normal permissions for the role. If you're root, you should be able to see the flags,
Right.
even though SC Linux might make it so you can't. But you could do that with SC Linux.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as the audit, we, the first team that figured out how to submit really good earnbacks that saying exactly what we did, how we did it, how we pivoted and first logged in as this user and then suited over to that user and all that. It was really cool because we didn't have to like write the debrief and figure out what we did at that point. We just were like, oh, we'll come back and copy and paste the earnback into the slide, and like that'll be how we show people that we did all this stuff, because it was that good. It was really, really cool to see that there were, students that had that figured out.
Yeah, I will note that like I did do this exact talk of a couple more slides of like, here's how to make red team sad, and the earnbacks at Iowa State right before the CDC. So
Yeah, now it's just a matter of will they have the time and energy to implement?
yes, that is. But like, at least you have the knowledge here to like, here's how to go and figure out what's been done to your system.
Never underestimate the power of undergrads hyped up on Red Bull.
Yes. Yep. With a little bit of knowledge.
And a whole lot of ChatGPT.
Yes. As I will note, like, ChatGPT can be your friend of helping write these, but you need to audit the heck out of its output.
Audit the audit?
Yeah, you audit the audit. It's one of those areas where like it likes to invent things, and if it smells fishy, just go read the man pages. Like the man pages are pretty detailed. If you go to the audit, audit CTL, audit.rules, like the man pages are pretty clear of like this is how you configure it. It's even got it's one of the man pages that has examples, so like they're half decent. So
That's rare.
yeah, they're the man pages that have go. I do man audit rules. See there's example of how to audit a file on there, and explains exactly what all those mean. If you want to audit syscalls, you can do that. There, and even gives you examples of how to use searching for audits. If you want to know, hey, I want to start of this week or things like that. Very, very powerful system, and the -A is the audit event ID. So if you want to just okay, I know that ID. So you Justin, you're saying oh yeah, I know that I saw this log. You can pass the search. I saw this ID. Interpret it for me. And then there's some of the notes down there for mismatching for architectures. And there's some actual examples down there.
That is a well-written log file, or not log, man file, yeah. Second only to the tar man page. Only because I always have to look up to see just exactly what.
Also pretty decent man page. Oh yeah, I got all those. Yeah, also got really good details on this one too.
I gotta say, the GPG main pages are pretty sweet, if you ask me.
It's kind of hit or miss. Sometimes you get these really good main pages like this, and other times it's just like, here's someone took the dash dash help and maybe just did dash dash help, or like put expanded on by an extra sentence on each arg, and that's it.
Yeah.
Or they just talk about things like you've been developing the program for 30 years and you know what they're referencing.
Yes, that's the other fun one.
SSH.
Yeah, the SSH man, the
Like, just use this feature if you want to do such and such. It's like, okay, how do I use that feature?
what about the let's see if I do. I'm trying to find the dash L command. Actually, somewhat well written. But yeah, that's it. Does anyone have any other questions?
We'll hit the kill switch here for recording.